What happens when a video game crosses the line so far that entire countries ban it? These aren't your typical edgy titles. These are the most disturbing, twisted, and downright controversial games ever made. Some were pulled before launch, others sparked global outrage, and a few still haunt the internet like digital urban legends. Number 1. Manhunt 2. Manhunt 2, developed by Rockstar Games, was a stealth-based horror title that shocked audiences with its brutally violent executions. The player, portraying an escaped mental patient, used various tools to kill enemies in disturbing close-up kill cams that were intentionally designed to be visceral and grotesque. The game's violent content was so extreme that it was initially banned in the UK, Ireland, Germany, and even received an adults-only rating from the ESRB in the US, which would prevent it from being released on most major platforms. To avoid a complete market collapse, Rockstar was forced to release a toned-down version with blurred-out execution scenes and reduced gore. Even then, many regions refused to allow its sale, claiming it glorified psychopathic violence and desensitized players. The controversy around Manhunt 2 sparked debates over how far games could go in portraying violence before becoming socially irresponsible, and it still remains one of the most heavily censored mainstream titles ever made. Number 2. Hatred. Hatred gained instant notoriety when its trailer dropped in 2014, portraying a trenchcoat-wearing man committing mass murder purely for nihilistic reasons. Unlike typical shooters that contextualize violence within a story, Hatred revels in cruelty, giving players no motive other than destruction. The player's sole objective is to kill as many civilians and law enforcement officers as possible in gruesome fashion, making it one of the most controversial games of the decade. The game was pulled from Steam Greenlight just days after it appeared, though Valve reinstated it following backlash about censorship. Despite that, it was banned in several countries and remains barred in regions like Germany and Australia. Critics and psychologists raised concerns about its impact on players and possible links to real-life violence, though no direct correlations were proven. The game became infamous not just for its gameplay, but as a cultural lightning rod in the discussion around video game ethics and freedom of expression. Number 3. Postal 2. Postal 2 is the definition of chaotic and offensive. Set in a satirical version of suburban America, the game allows players to complete mundane tasks, like picking up milk, in the most violent and obscene ways possible. From using cats as silencers to committing arson and urinating on people, the game doesn't hold back on shock value. Its over-the-top violence and crude humor led it to be banned in several countries, including Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and Malaysia. Critics slammed the game for being tasteless, unnecessarily vulgar, and promoting hate-filled behavior. Developers Running with Scissors defended Postal 2 as satire and a statement on freedom of choice in games, but many governments didn't see it that way. The sheer level of player agency and the way it encouraged mayhem pushed the game into international infamy, and to this day, Postal 2 is cited as one of the most extreme examples of unchecked content in gaming. Number 5. Rule of Rose is a psychological horror game set in 1930s England, focusing on a young girl trapped in a twisted world ruled by children. Its slow, haunting narrative was rich in symbolism, trauma, and emotional abuse, which many found unsettling. What pushed the game into controversy, however, were allegations, many false or exaggerated, that it contained sexually suggestive content involving minors, particularly during a time when Europe was increasingly scrutinizing media involving children. Italy was the first to ban the game entirely, and pressure from other European countries led to its removal from shelves or cancellation of release altogether in many regions. Although much of the outrage was based on misinformation, the game's uncomfortable atmosphere, eerie themes of childhood cruelty, and mature subject matter made it a pariah in the eyes of politicians and watchdog groups. Despite being a cult classic today, Rule of Rose remains banned or restricted in several countries due to the persistent stigma around its content. Number 5. Thrill Kill. Thrill Kill was a multiplayer fighting game developed for the original PlayStation, featuring grotesque characters like a dominatrix, cannibal, and amputee on a murderous rampage in hellish arenas. It was completed and ready for release in 1998, But EA, who acquired the publishing rights, canceled it at the last minute, calling it too violent and out of alignment with our company values. This was notable at a time when even Mortal Kombat was thriving. The game never officially saw release, but leaked copies began circulating online, making it an underground legend. It's remembered for its brutal thrill kills, fatalities, sadomasochistic undertones, and deeply disturbing character designs. Critics and advocacy groups feared it would set a dangerous precedent for glorifying depravity, and EA's decision to cancel it became one of the rare cases where a game was banned before it even hit store shelves. Number 6. RapeLay. Few games have caused as much global outrage as RapeLay, a Japanese title released in 2006 that allowed players to stalk and sexually assault women. The game was created by a small studio and was never intended for international release, but once it surfaced online, the backlash was immediate and brutal. Governments, media outlets, and activists around the world condemned it, with many calling for a crackdown on such content. RapeLay was banned in countries like the UK, Argentina, and Indonesia, while major retailers in Japan pulled it from shelves under mounting pressure. The game sparked massive debates about censorship, cultural boundaries, and what should never be gamified. Even other adult game developers distanced themselves from it, and platforms worldwide still use it as an example of what not to publish. Its infamy still lingers as one of the darkest moments in gaming history. Number 7. The Guy Game. The Guy Game was marketed as a party trivia title for adults, but it quickly landed in legal hot water when it was revealed that one of the women featured was underage at the time of filming. The game, which rewarded correct answers with topless video clips, was pulled from shelves and subject to a lawsuit that barred its distribution. It was banned almost immediately after the revelation, and unsold copies were destroyed. Beyond the legal ramifications, the Guy Game was also heavily criticized for objectifying women and promoting sexist stereotypes. Even without the age issue, the game was seen as outdated, crass, and exploitative. Its banning became a cautionary tale, not just about legal due diligence, but about the gaming industry's responsibility to uphold ethical standards in content and production. Number 8. Agony, unrated version. Agony was pitched as a nightmarish journey through hell, but the game's original version included such explicit and disturbing imagery, including sexual violence, torture, and blasphemy, that it was heavily censored before release. The unrated version, which eventually leaked and was released unofficially, contained everything from demon orgy scenes to grotesque mutilations, resulting in bans in Germany, Australia, and New Zealand. Critics slammed it not just for its content, but for using shock value in place of solid gameplay. Despite its ambition, Agony became infamous for trying to weaponize horror without regard for taste or psychological impact. It became a viral talking point in gaming communities for its outrageous designs and disturbing aesthetic, but most players agreed the experience was more traumatic than entertaining. Even horror fans had a hard time defending its more extreme moments. Resident Evil 5, early African versions. While Resident Evil 5 was never fully banned, its early footage and themes sparked major controversy in parts of Africa, where it was accused of racial insensitivity. Trailers showed a white protagonist gunning down hordes of infected black villagers, which struck a nerve with critics and audiences who saw echoes of colonialist imagery. Some African nations considered restrictions, and the developers were pressured to recontextualize some of the game's visuals and characters. Capcom made several changes to the final product, including the addition of a black co-protagonist, Sheva Alomar, and more ethnically diverse enemies. Still, the initial reaction left a lasting impact on how games are evaluated for cultural sensitivity. It remains one of the earliest major examples of a AAA title having to face global socio-political scrutiny before launch. Number 10. Mortal Kombat. Originals. When the original Mortal Kombat hit arcades in 1992, its blood-soaked fatalities and realistic digitized graphics caused a media firestorm. Parents and politicians decried its violence as excessive, and it became one of the key examples cited during U.S. congressional hearings on video game content. The backlash was so intense that it led directly to the creation of the ESRB, the video game rating system still in use today. While not banned globally, The original games were censored in countries like Germany, Australia, and South Korea. Nintendo famously removed blood from the SNES version, replacing it with sweat to reduce controversy. Despite this, the franchise thrived, partially because of the controversy, and cemented itself as a legend in the fighting game genre. But its early days were a reminder that pushing boundaries in games can sometimes trigger global consequences. From banned cartridges to blacklisted downloads, these games proved that even in the gaming world, some lines just shouldn't be crossed. Which one shocked you the most, or have you played any of them yourself? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget this is just the tip of the